Hey friends, it's me, your girl Kristen Denise, also known as KD, and I'm here with day 5 of Black History Month. I'm actually super duper excited about today's contribution. I realize I'm gonna probably say this every day, right? Because why would I share something I'm not excited about? But this one hits close to home for a lot of different reasons. If you know anything about me, you'll understand why this is really significant to me and why I'm excited to share this amazing Black woman in history with you. So today I'm going to talk about Charlotte Forten Grimke, who was born in 1837 and became an ancestor in 1914. She was an educator, a writer, and an abolitionist, right? So she was a pioneering Black educator, abolitionist, and writer, and she dedicated her life to uplifting African Americans through education and activism. She was actually born into a wealthy and influential free Black family in Philadelphia, and she was raised in an environment that emphasized education and activism, right? Her family was deeply involved in the abolitionist movement, and she grew up surrounded by influential figures like William Lloyd Garrison and Frederick Douglass, who we talked about a couple times already. But despite being free, she still faced racism throughout her life, and particularly as she pursued a career in education. However, she remained absolutely committed to teaching and became one of the first Black teachers to work in the South during the Civil War, educating newly freed African Americans. So sis had a passion and sis had a purpose. And I want you to think about what it would mean for someone who was born a free Black woman to go into the South during the Civil War, not after. Not when it's all said and done and we know who won, but during the fight of the Civil War, because she was so passionate about education and the impact that education can have on African Americans that she did not wait until the war was over. She went to work with people who had already been newly freed, even during the midst of the war. So let's learn a little bit more about sis and her many accomplishments over her lifetime. So again, she was one of the first Black teachers in the South. She went down there in 1862 to be a part of the Port Royal experiment, right? So during the Civil War, Forten joined the Port Royal experiment, which was a government program designed to assist formerly enslaved people in the South Carolina Sea Islands. And she was one of the few Northern Black women to travel to the South to teach newly freed Black children. She did this at a time when many believed African Americans were incapable of learning, and she helped to prove otherwise. Like, we can learn, you got to give us the tools to do so. And she was a part of giving those tools. She saw education as a revolutionary act, like I still do today. And she knew that it could empower free people to live independent lives, something we are still working towards and still believing in. And while she faced harsh conditions, her commitment never wavered, which I absolutely love. And she documented her experiences in her diary, which ended up offering a very rare first-person account of newly freed communities. Sis is doing all the things, right? In addition, she advocated for racial equality and women's rights. She used her voice to push for equal rights and became a member of the Salem Female Anti-Slavery Society, and she worked closely with leading abolitionists of the day. Her writing and activism challenged the idea that Black people were inferior because, hello, we never were and never will be. And she fought against discrimination in education and pushed for equal opportunity specifically for Black women. She promoted Black women's leadership as well. Do y'all understand why Charlotte got a place in my heart? She got a place in my heart, right? She was one of the first Black people to be published in a major Northern literary magazine, which was a huge deal at the time, including the Atlantic Monthly, where she shared her experience and thoughts on racial justice. Sis was out here. And I absolutely love that. Eventually, she married into the Grimke family. She married Francis Grimke, who was a prominent Black minister and activist. He was a part of the famous Grimke family, which was known for their abolitionist work at the time. And together, they continued their efforts for racial justice, working closely with organizations like the NAACP. She was deeply involved also in her husband's church-based activism. Again, do you see why this woman, like, I'm so glad to have discovered her and cannot wait to learn more about her. But she spent her time working with freed slaves and advocating for education. So here are a couple things we can learn from Charlotte and apply today. I'm sorry, it's late, my words. I know how my words get as the night goes on. It gets a little sketchy. One, education absolutely still is a tool for liberation. Honestly, that's part of why I'm doing this series. Hello? Educating people on the many, many influential Black people that we never learn about, that we never hear about. And maybe it'll spark something in somebody, right? If you're in education and you learn about a Charlotte Grimke today, does that inspire you and influence what you do? If you learn more about an A. Philip Randolph or James Weldon Johnson, does that change the trajectory of your life in some way, right? The famous Black person that I learned about in my childhood that kind of changed the trajectory of my life was Maya Angelou. Reading I Know Why I Have the Caged Bird Sings in 7th grade was a game changer for me. I was educated on someone and something completely different than anything I had ever heard of. It was inspiring and motivating, and it pushed me, and it still pushes me to this day. So prayerfully, through the education of these different Black people who made significant contributions, especially ones that we don't normally hear about, maybe it's pushing something in you, and this education can be a tool for you to first liberate yourself from the confines of society and what people tell you can do based on who you are and how you show up. But more importantly, it will push you to think of all the things you can be. Because if Charlotte Forten Grimke could do this during the time period in which she did it, which is the 1800s into the early 1900s, what more can we do today? Even in a time with a government that seems to actively be working against us, right? There's so much that is possible for all of us if we kind of stick to our guns and push forth the agenda that we deem relevant and valuable and powerful. We can continue to educate and liberate young minds and even older minds, right? Older people can still learn. I'm still learning at 43. And that may not seem old to you, but there are some people who are 43 who are entrenched in their ways. I'm not as entrenched as some would like to think, but you just can't come to me with no foolishness. But we can also use education as a tool for liberation, like our good sis Charlotte Forten Grimke, and help to use that liberation to fight for equal access to education and resources for those who find themselves in marginalized communities, which honestly, unfortunately, we're going to see more of if they're able to abolish the Department of Education and invest in literacy and mentorship, especially for young Black students. This is what I am all about. What are you about? What changes are you going to make? In addition, she used her writing and her voice to inspire change. She didn't just educate in the classroom. She wrote about her experiences. She wrote about racism, and she wrote about the importance of justice. Today, we have the opportunity to use our social media. Hello. We can write blogs. We can get involved in so much, have published writing in magazines, articles, newsletters, online journals, professional journals. There's so many ways for us to use our writing to raise awareness about racial and social issues today. That's part of what I get to do as a researcher. And it's a friendly reminder that Black women, again, have always, always, always been on the front lines. Not the backup crew, the front lines. And so despite facing sexism and racism, Forten was a leader in her time. Okay, she reminds us that Black women's voices must be heard in education, politics, and activism, and that all of our contributions matter. We may not get public recognition at the time, but it doesn't mean that our work is not shaping the future and it is not extremely valid and important. She was more than just a teacher. She was a trailblazer who broke racial and gender barriers in education and activism, and one of my new favorite people. Her legacy continues to inspire educators, writers, and activists who are working to uplift Black communities today. That's definitely me. How about you? As always, remember to do what you need to do to be more than okay, because you deserve to be more than okay. And absolutely do what you need to do to live a life you love, because you deserve to live a life you love. But while you live in that life and while you're being more than okay, make sure you're doing something to help somebody else do the same. All right? I love you. That's all I got. Mwah.